Hello and welcome. So I want to lay out a scenario for you. You get a ping, it's an email, you look at it, and your boss has told you that they're going to be designing a new course. Well, it's not exactly new. It's a course that's been very popular on campus, but they want to move it online to increase the number of enrollment because it always gets filled up way too fast. So you know it's going to be really full. But they don't know anything about video production. They've never done an online course before, and they're used to teaching in a large lecture hall. Now everyone, all the higher ups, want this course to really succeed, to really shine in every possible way. So the question is, how can you guide this instructor to create compelling and motivating videos that the students will be excited about, that will look good, that people want to watch, to really make this course shine? Well, there's lots of different ways that you could approach this, but the one I'm going to talk about today is using the ARCS motivational model by John Keller. And we're going to look at how we can apply this to video production. So what is ARCS? ARCS is an acronym for attention, relevance, confidence, and satisfaction. So let's go down the line and define each one. So attention. Well, how can you garner this in a video? Well, it can be really subtle things such as changing the imagery or the scene. Keller in his book recommends changing the environment, but he wasn't writing specifically about video. The easiest way to change the environment in a video is to change the scenery or the imagery. Now that might be subtle, just like changing the colors behind me, or it might be a little bit more jarring, like putting a snake that actually this baby snake is a little cute, right on the screen, but sudden changes. The next thing we could do is bring in surprising information. For example, did you know that elephants are absolutely terrified of bees? It's true. In fact, elephants even have their own vocalization that's clear, that can be identified for, "Oh God, the bees are attacking." Now, ideally, your surprising information won't be some random fact about elephants, but rather it will be something that is surprising and relevant to the source material. If it's a course about environmental policy, it might be about the amount of pollution out in the world, or the Cuyahoga River that was the most polluted river in the world for a long time. The next thing you can do is, of course, add a little bit of humor. So John Keller suggests adding some humor, but not to add too much. If you make the course a complete joke, then it's just going to be distracting. It's not going to grab the attention of the students, and they'll become dulled to the experience. They won't necessarily react to it in the way that you want them to or expect them to after a while. But sprinkling some here and there, is a great way to suddenly bring back student attention and keep them interested and motivated in the course. The next thing you can do is present them with a problem. So let's say you're talking about engineering and the tools that we have today, and you want to present them with a problem. Well, you could present them with a modern day problem, or you could get a little more creative and think of something like Stonehenge. In this era with very few tools, none of the tools we really use today, how did Stonehenge get built? And this is a problem you can ask students. You can bring it up and grab their attention with that. Or it can be something much more specific, like a case study or scenario that's relevant to the course material. And next, you can ask questions. Preferably not quite in this interrogative scene like we see here, but something a little bit more friendly, something a little bit more Socratic, where you lead them to an idea or lead them to a problem by asking questions. Now, you might be thinking, but this is a video, I'm not going to get any responses. Well, that's not necessarily a problem. You can still ask questions that lead them down a certain path and then answer those questions rhetorically. It happens all the time already in lecture halls. Now, one step up from asking questions is to bring up unanswered questions or events where you're left hanging thinking, wait, what's going to happen? Such as this poor guy, how's he going to get down from there? And last, we have variability. Bringing in a variety so not every slide in the PowerPoint deck looks the same, not every moment of the instructor's lecturing is the same, and so that even the same patterns aren't constantly followed. This even helps with how you would want to break up a video so that it's in nice, clear sections and segments, effectively making it chapters. And speaking of that, now it's time to move on to relevance. So relevance is all about making the content relatable to your students. How can you make the content mean something to them? And this means not just on an objective, this is what you need to know to pass the class level, but this means the students' perceived needs. What do they want? What do they need out of their education? What do they need out of this course? And what can they personally gain from it? This might become a little bit easier if it is a major specific course. You can think about what is relatable for that major. If you have an engineering course and you're going to talk about materials engineering, you can look at something like the Mars rover. How did they put together everything they needed to get it through the atmosphere and land it on Mars without breaking anything? What's it made out of? How do you make those specific parts? And instead of just talking about gold and how it doesn't corrode like normal metals, you can talk about this is why we use gold in parts of the Mars rover. Or, if it's not a course that can be relatable, let's say it's Geography 101, that isn't necessarily going to matter a whole lot to a materials engineer. But what you could do is think of stories where you either put the student in the position of someone in a different place in this geography course, or you tell a story from the perspective of one of those people in a geography course. And this is a great way to teach everything from drama to history to politics. So we've covered A and R. Now let's move on to the C, which is confidence. Confidence is all about providing students with the sense that they understand the material, that they can apply what they're learning, and not overwhelming them. So, the first thing is to provide them with opportunities for success. If you were to sit down and play a video game, you wouldn't necessarily want to start out on the nightmare difficulty, on the most possibly difficult setting you could play. You would want to start out on a setting that's applicable to you and your experience. Do you have experience with this subject matter? Do you have any prerequisite knowledge and all prerequisite knowledge to learn about this topic? And this applies very well to videos. Because when you sit down and watch a video and the instructor starts going through a problem or a scenario or a situation and you don't have any background knowledge to follow, instantly you're demotivated, you're overwhelmed. How can I understand this? How can I follow this? How can I be successful in this course when I look at this and I don't know what's going on in the first 2 minutes of the lecture because the professor's thrown out so much jargon and end of course quality material that the new person, in the first day of classes, doesn't know what's happening. Now next is control. So control is admittedly a little bit harder to give to students. Sure, they can pause and rewind, but when Keller's talking about control, he's talking about things like giving the students opportunities to do essays of their choice, to write in short answers, not just fill in a multiple choice bubble sheet. However, something you can do, if you have the opportunity, is use gamification. Provide interactive links that pop up during the video that maybe lead students to more information, or branching paths. This might be dependent on the technology that's available to you, but it is one way that you can start to implement gamification and give the students a more motivated reason to keep watching the video. So we've covered attention, relevance, and confidence. Let's talk about satisfaction. How can we have our students feel satisfied with the learning experience they're getting out of a video? Well, one thing we can do is remind them that they've leveled up. So John Keller calls this natural consequences. And effectively, what you're going to point out to the students, what you're going to remind them by the end of the lecture is that they've learned something. something truly applicable that they can apply either to their next assignment, at the very least, to their entire career, to their life going forward. We want to let them know that they've gained experience and they now know something that they didn't know at the beginning of the video. The other way to provide satisfaction is with rewards. Now, John Keller talks a lot about monetary rewards, but in this case, we're probably not going to have those available to us since these are presumably college students. But what we can do is give them recognition rewards. We can recognize their efforts. We can give them, and this is where gamification comes in, points for completing videos, for making comments, for doing discussion posts. Somewhat like how Reddit provides karma for making posts and getting positive responses. You could even have leaderboards where you can see who's the student with the most points, who's gained the most. And this really does work for motivating students. All right, so we've given you all the pieces, but how do you actually start to design them? Well, John Keller's method in his book is pretty similar to any type of design method or process. First you define, you design, you develop, and then you pilot. So when you define, first you want to find course information. What is this course? What are the prerequisite knowledge pieces for this course? Where does this course fall into different majors? Then we can look at the audience information. Who are the students that are taking the course? Are they freshmen? Are they seniors? Are they in their major probably? Are they maybe exploring around? Who is your audience? Who is your student? And what do they care about? This is where you're going to find out how to be relatable to them, how to make stories that they're going to care about, and what to focus on. And then you want to think about what's motivating that student. The motivation for a freshman taking English Comp 101 is going to be completely different than a student taking a senior level business course right before they graduate and they actually get to apply that knowledge directly. Then you might want to look at the existing materials. What's already out there? What can you maybe use? What might the students have already been exposed to? And then define your objectives so that you know what is important in your video, and that way you can effectively communicate it to your students. All right, next is design. So this is where we're going to list the tactics. These are the ARCS, ARCS, and we're going to think about all those little pieces and which ones are really applicable to my audience, to this course, to the objectives of an individual video. Then you're going to select or design the tactics, and then you start to integrate them. And when you're integrating them, that's part of writing and drafting, and that's part of the development phase for your video. So that's going to be everything from making a PowerPoint, like what I have behind me, or maybe selecting images, making new images, doing the actual narration, and doing the actual recording. And then you'll want to pilot the video. This is where you'll evaluate it yourself, but you might share it with friends and coworkers and other colleagues, have them evaluate it, give you feedback, and then you can further then revise it. So hopefully, this has given you a little bit of an idea of how you can take the motivational model of ARCS and apply it to your next video for your course.